Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into a piece of source material that, well, it's a classic for anyone thinking about personal success.
That's right. We're focusing on Chapter 9 of Think and Grow Rich. Specifically, we're going to unpack what it says about decision, capital D. It's presented as absolutely vital.
Yeah, non-negotiable seems like the right word based on this chapter. So if you've ever felt, kind of stuck or maybe not making progress on your goals, this deep dive should really help.
We want to give you a shortcut to understanding why the source argues that making your mind up quickly and then really sticking to it is such a big deal.
It seems to be presented as a key thing separating people who achieve from those who don't.
Exactly. Our mission here is pretty straightforward. Pull out the main lessons on beating procrastination, beating indecision, and building that habit of making definite decisions.
Okay, so are you ready to explore why indecision might be holding you back more than you think? And we'll look at some huge historical decisions too, how they happened according to this source. Let's get into it.
All right, so the starting point of the source is pretty sobering. It talks about failure.
Yeah, it kicks off with an analysis, right, of thousands of people.
Over 25,000 people who were analyzed because they were seen as, failures in achieving their goals and lack of decision. It was almost at the very top of the list, like top 2 or 3 out of 31 major causes.
Wow, right near the top. That really frames it, doesn't it? Just not deciding or delaying is presented as a massive obstacle right from the get-go.
Absolutely. And procrastination is positioned as the direct opposite of decision. A common enemy, it calls it. Something we all kind of have to fight against.
So failing to decide, especially failing to decide quickly, is seen as just fundamentally blocking progress.
That's the setup. Now, contrast that with the people who do succeed, particularly in accumulating wealth, according to this analysis.
Okay, how does that look different?
It's presented as a very clear pattern. They looked at hundreds of millionaires and found they consistently shared this one habit about decisions. They made them promptly.
Okay, prompt decision.
And then, maybe even more importantly, they changed those decisions very slowly, if they changed them at all.
Ah, okay. So, decide fast, change slow. And the pattern for those who struggle financially is the complete reverse.
Exactly the reverse. People who don't accumulate money tend to reach decisions slowly, often agonizing over them or maybe never really deciding firmly.
Right.
And then, if they do finally land on something, they change their minds quickly and often. It's that lack of stick-to-itiveness.
So it's not just making the decision, it's the speed and the firmness that this analysis really pulls out.
Speed and firmness, yep. And the source gives us a really famous example to illustrate this.
I think I know who you mean, Henry Ford.
That's the one. Ford is held up as, like, the poster child for deciding quickly, definitely, and then being very slow to change course.
To the point of being seen as stubborn, right? Obstinate?
Yeah, the source uses that word obstinate. It says the trait was so strong in him, that's the reputation he got.
And the big example is the Model T, which the source kind of amusingly calls the world's ugliest car.
Yeah, and Ford just kept making it. Even when his advisors, even when customers were apparently urging him, change it, make something new, he stuck to his guns.
And the argument isn't necessarily that he was right to wait so long eventually, but that his firmness in that initial decision made him a fortune before a change was forced on him.
Exactly. And the source explicitly says that even if he was a bit obstinate, that was far preferable to the opposite habit, being slow to decide and quick to change. That's seen as the path to failure.
There is even an editor's note mentioned about the sheer consistency. 15 million Model Ts between 1908 and 1927 barely changed, and famously, only in black for most of that time.
Only in black. That's commitment to a decision.
It is, and the source mentions Napoleon Hill actually met Ford around 1911, found him very focused, almost cold, just laser focused on the Model T. Hill even bought one.
Right. And Hill later attributed Ford's massive success directly to that intense self-control and concentration, which all ties back to making definite decisions and sticking with them.
Okay, so that's the success side. But the source also flags major reasons why people fail. And a huge one is being too easily influenced by other people.
Oh, definitely. It says the majority who fail, especially financially, are just swayed too easily by what others think.
They let gossip, rumors, what their friends say, even what they read in the news, do their thinking for them.
And the source has some pretty strong language about opinions, doesn't it?
It does. It calls them the cheapest commodities on earth.
Yeah. Basically saying everyone's got opinions, they're easy to come by, and people are happy to give them away, whether you asked or not.
And if you let yourself be swayed by all these cheap commodities...
The source is really clear. You just won't succeed. not in anything significant, and definitely not in turning a desire for something, like money, into reality. If you're always shifting based on others, you don't really have a strong desire of your own.
That makes sense. So the core advice then is pretty much trust yourself.
Keep your own counsel. That's the phrase used. Rely on your own brain, your own mind to make decisions. And then, crucially, follow through. Act on them.
And be careful who you share your plans with, too. It's quite specific about that.
Very specific. Only confide in your mastermind group members, and only if you're absolutely certain they are completely aligned and supportive of your specific purpose.
Maybe we should quickly define mastermind group as the source uses it. It's basically 2 or more people working together in total harmony for a definite goal, creating a kind of combined energy or third mind.
Exactly. It's a very particular kind of alliance. And the source even warns about, well, people close to you, friends, relatives.
Yeah, it says even with good intentions, they can hold you back. Sometimes it's doubt disguised as concern. Sometimes it says friends might even ridicule your plans.
Which can obviously kill your confidence, lead to feeling inferior.
So it all comes back to, you've got a brain, use it. Make your own decisions. If you need facts, okay, go get them. But do it quietly. Don't broadcast your purpose prematurely.
Which ties right into the next pitfall the source points out, talking too much.
Yes. The idea that people who don't know much often try to sound like they do by talking a lot.
Right, too much talking, not enough listening. And the advice for developing prompt decision-making is simple. Keep your eyes and ears open.
And your mouth closed.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. If you're always broadcasting, you're not taking information in.
You miss out on knowledge. And there's another danger, too. You might reveal your plans to people who are, let's say, envious.
Right, people who might try to trip you up, or even, the source warns, steal your ideas.
It makes a sharp point. When you talk to someone truly knowledgeable, every word you utter shows them exactly how much you know or don't know.
Ouch. So real wisdom often looks like modesty, silence, listening.
That's the implication. Everyone's looking for opportunity, so guard your valuable plans. The source suggests a motto. Tell the world what you intend to do, but first, show it.
Deeds, not words.
Exactly. Deeds require decision, and often they require courage.
Okay, so this is where it gets into some really big historical examples, right? The courage needed for major decisions.
Yeah, the source argues that the value of a decision is often directly related to the courage it took to make it. And the biggest decisions, the ones that shape civilization, they involved huge risks, often life or death risks.
Like Lincoln and the Emancipation Proclamation, knowing it could tear the country further apart, alienate supporters.
Or Socrates choosing poison rather than backing down on his beliefs about free thought and speech. Massive courage.
And the source uses the American Declaration of Independence as like the ultimate case study in this.
Absolutely. 56 men signing a document, knowing full well that if things went badly, they'd likely be hanged as traitors. That's high-stakes decision-making.
It's a story we all know, but the source wants us to look underneath at the power of the decisions involved, this intangible power that maybe gets missed.
So let's trace it through that lens. It starts with things simmering, like that incident in Boston, 1770, soldiers, citizens clashing, resentment building.
Right, and that led to a meeting. And the source zooms in on a critical decision made, it says, in the minds of just 2 guys, John Hancock and Samuel Adams.
They decided, courageously, that something had to be done to get the British troops out of Boston. A definite, risky decision.
And the source calls that decision, in just those 2 minds, the actual start of American freedom. Pretty bold claim.
It required faith, courage. Adams made the demand, and surprisingly, the governor agreed. The troops left.
But that decision set off a chain. Adams started thinking bigger, communicating with Richard Henry Lee in Virginia.
Right. And in 1772, Adams gets this idea. So let's set up formal committees of correspondence between all the colonies to coordinate.
The source sees this as the birth of the organizing power, taking scattered resistance and giving it structure, kind of like a political mastermind group starting to form. Adams, Lee, Hancock initially.
While this is happening, the British are trying to shut it down. The new governor, Gage, sends someone to basically try and bribe Samuel Adams, stuff causing trouble, maybe avoid treason charges.
And Adams's reply is just legendary, according to the source, essentially. Tell Gage I serve a higher king, and no personal gain will make me abandon my country's cause. And maybe warn Gage not to push people too far.
That's definite. Gage reacts furiously, issues a proclamation, pardon for all rebels except Adams and Hancock. They're marked men, essentially a death sentence hanging over them.
Which forces another critical decision. Adams and Hancock call a secret meeting of their key supporters.
And Adams apparently locks the door, puts the key in his pocket, and says nobody leaves until we agree to organize a Congress of all the colonies.
Intense. You can imagine the tension, fear, doubt, excitement. But Adams and Hancock, the source describes them as immune to fear, blind to failure. They pushed it through.
And using those correspondence committees they'd already decided to create, the decision was made. First Continental Congress, Philadelphia, September 5th, 1774.
Now, here's where the source makes a really interesting claim. It says that date, September 5th, 1774, is actually more important historically than July 4th, 1776.
Yeah, it's provocative, right? The reasoning is simple. Without the definite decision to hold that first Congress, the Declaration of Independence could never have happened. That initial organizing decision was the foundation.
It really highlights how crucial that first decisive step can be, even if the final outcome gets more attention later.
So these guys described as having no power, no army, no money, just principles and courage they need in Congress. More figures emerge, like Jefferson writing bold pamphlets, Patrick Henry's famous "If this be treason" line. All acts of decision.
And then comes the big one in Congress. June 1776. Richard Henry Lee makes the motion. These united colonies are free and independent states.
The source calls that resolution the most momentous decision ever placed on paper.
Lee had to leave, so he entrusted the cause to Jefferson, who led the committee to draft the actual declaration, knowing, as they all did, signing it was potentially signing their own death warrant.
And then, July 4th, 1776, Jefferson reads the final draft, it's adopted, and 56 men step up and sign it. Each one, the source says, staking his own life upon his decision.
Wow. Framing it that way as a sequence of incredibly high-stakes, courageous decisions gives it a different feel.
The conclusion drawn is that the nation itself was born from a decision made by this 56-person mastermind group. And the spirit of that decision, that unwavering resolve, is what fueled the eventual success. It was a power that, as the source puts it, does not recognize failure.
Okay, powerful stuff, but how does this connect back to, you and me, to individual goals?
Right, here's the bridge. The source states very clearly, the power that gave America its freedom is the exact same power that every single person needs to use to overcome their own difficulties and reach their own goals.
It's the same underlying force.
Yes, made up of the principles described throughout the book. And if you look closely at the Declaration story, you see many of them in action. Desire for freedom, decision, obviously, faith in their cause, persistence through years of struggle, the mastermind, the coordinated group, organized planning, the committees, the Congress.
It reinforces that core idea of the whole book. Thoughts, especially when backed by strong desire and definite decision, can transform into reality. Founding a country, building a steel empire, not miracles, but applications of natural laws.
Laws that are available to anyone. Anyone with the faith and the courage to make definite decisions and act on them.
So people who decide quickly and firmly, they know what they want.
And they usually get it. Leaders, the source says, in any walk of life, decide quickly and stick to it. That's why they're leaders. The world tends to get out of the way for someone who clearly knows where they're going.
But the flip side is also true, right? Indecision is also a habit.
Yeah, and the source suggests it often starts young. School, maybe college, drifting without a clear, definite purpose.
And that habit just carries over into choosing a career.
Often, yes. Young people might just take the first job they find because they haven't made a definite decision about what they really want or how a specific job fits into a larger plan.
The source makes a pretty bold claim here that the vast majority of people are in their jobs simply because they lacked the decisiveness to plan something specific and pursue it.
It's a challenging thought.
Yeah.
It puts the responsibility squarely back on the individual and their willingness to decide.
So, okay, the signers of the Declaration, they risked their lives. The stakes were incredibly high. What are the stakes for us in our everyday decisions?
The source draws a direct parallel. You might not be staking your life, but when you make definite decisions about your career, your goals, your finances, you are staking your economic freedom, your potential for financial independence, for wealth, for achieving whatever success means to you.
And those things, riches, desirable positions that are just going to fall into your lap.
No. They aren't available to people who neglect or refuse to expect them, plan for them, and demand them through definite decision and action.
And it closes that loop powerfully. The person who desires wealth with the same intensity and definiteness that Samuel Adams desired freedom
is sure to get it. That level of unwavering, courageous, definite desire and decision is presented as the key.
So we've really traced this thread, haven't we? From how damaging indecision can be, right up to the immense power of prompt, firm, courageous decision-making. We saw it in industry with Ford and in history with the founding of a nation.
Yeah, the source ties it all together. The habits of successful people aren't random. They align with these fundamental principles that have apparently driven massive change throughout history. Decision isn't just a small part of it, it's kind of foundational.
It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it,
Yeah.
about the decisions you're facing right now? Big ones, small ones. How decisively are you approaching them?
Mm. And it leaves us with this final kind of provocative question, echoing those historical stakes. What gallows, what potential risk or opposition are you willing to face for the decisions that truly matter for your life, for your goals, for your definition of success?
Something to definitely mull over. Keep digging into your own sources. Keep seeking those insights. We'll see you on the next deep dive.